Hello everyone, today I'm back down Sunderland East End, just outside Holy Trinity Church, built 1719. The purpose of this particular video is, as the title says, to talk about the desecration of Sunderland Parish Graveyard, which is this huge area to the side of the church. I've written a couple of things about what happened to the graveyard, but I didn't know the full story. But I've come across a couple of things this last couple of weeks which had a little bit extra information onto it. Now, just a bit of background. There was a movement in Sunderland to sort of turn the graveyards into open spaces or gardens of remembrance. So Bishop Weymouth Parish Church, which is now Sunderland Minster, that lost a lot of its headstones. Some of them were lost because the church was expanded. And St Peter's over Monk Weymouth had the same idea, turn into a garden of remembrance. And the last one of the three to have a major change was this place. So I'd always thought it happened about the mid 1950s, but it was towards the end of the decade. Money was set aside in the mid 1950s, but probably for whatever reason it wasn't actually used and the project wasn't started till later on. Now, there's a small article in the Sunderland Daily Echo, now Sunderland Echo, in summer 1959, which states the first stage of the transformation of this area into a parkland and a garden of remembrance was almost nearly complete. And it mentions that the front of the churchyard, which is this particular wall here, had a very high wall, and what they did was they reduced it and put metal railings on the top to top it out, which is here. So that was part one. Also, they split the graveyard into a garden of remembrance and a parkland with a metal fence. So as you can see through there, this bit must have been the garden of remembrance, a small bit, and the parkland was the area on the right. I'd always thought it was just all a garden of remembrance, but that article specifies that it was sort of like a split. It also mentions that hundreds of tons of headstones were removed from the site. Now, a lot of the actual tombstones, monuments, weren't just headstones, they were actually like sculptures, like false crypts, monuments to people from the past. So they would have all been broken up and taken away from the site and probably turned into rubble. At St Peter's, what they actually did was just keep the perfect one. So if anything had a little bit of damage or wasn't 100% legible, they would turn to rubble, and the best ones were put against the back of the wall. So as you can see, it's a huge graveyard from 1719 all the way up to the mid 1850s, but there was people buried here after it closed in existing vaults by licence. I think the last one was around the turn of the century. Just going to wait till I leave here because there's two dogs in there. It's one of the problems with this place. It literally is just a huge dog toilet now, and a lot of the time you can come in here and there'll be dogs running around without on a lead chasing after you. And I'm not a dog fan, so I'll let them get out. This is one of the entrances into the churchyard. Grave Memorial Gardens Parish Churchyard from 1719 to 1854 accommodates over 100,000 burials, including the gravestone of Jack Crawford and the tomb of Reverend Robin Gray, Sunderland's beloved rector from 1819 to 1838. That's on this old Sunderland Heritage Trail, so that probably looks like it's been put in the 1980s, 1990s. That figure of 100,000 I'm very suspicious of, because it sounds like it's been rounded up, and when I've checked the burial records, to get that level you had to have an average over 800 a year from 1719 to the mid 1850s, and even in the 1700s and early 1800s a lot of the years were 300-400, and even to get to 700-800 wasn't until like the 1840s. So it's probably, and there was an article once which I read which said that it was about 1820, 1830 saying that it had reached 50,000, so probably somewhere around 80,000, still at tens of thousands. That article from 1959 also states that they were going to keep this memorial for Jack Crawford, which was erected by public subscription decades after his death, because he died in the 1831 cholera epidemic, and this was put on his grave. Now, in that 1959 article, it says they were going to keep a plaque which was close to the area where victims of the 1831 cholera epidemic were buried. So he was one of the first to die of cholera. So I'm assuming that the burials for the cholera victims in that plaque had originally been around this particular area. And just in terms of cholera, the vast majority of all the people in Sunderland who died of cholera were from Sunderland down the East End. I think there was about 26 or 7 from Bishop Wearmouth and about the same amount from Monk Wearmouth. I think that's where sometimes it gets mistaken about where people were buried and so on. But because most of the people who died were from Sunderland, they were buried in Sunderland Parish Churchyard. And on the other side of that fence, it's a stunning Georgian building. Look at that. So on the other side of that fence, looks like it's the Garden of Remembrance. There is one headstone randomly in the Donison Gardens over there. So that's one of the few headstones that was left. There's one just in here for Rector Gray. I think it's just somewhere just over there. And then there's a one for a random gentleman with it, which has got that obelisk over there. That article from 1959 mentions a corner with all graves was kept as it was. Now, I'm only speculating, but I suspect it is that corner over there, because there's around 100 headstones that have been laid flat, probably some point after 1959. Now, so much history was lost by this desecration. They levelled and seeded the land. It wasn't always as flat as this. It had hilly areas, and it was an uneven surface. So if you'd come here, probably at any point up until 1959, you could have just literally walked through been in like a time machine. It had all the history of Sunderland from 1719 up to that point. You had cholera victims, you had actors, comedians who lived in the town, who'd peed on local stage shows. You had nurses who died in the cholera epidemic, sailors, mariners, teachers, publicans. Hundreds of headstones, all lost to history. And what was left is these these ones over here, which, as I said, I reckon are the ones that were left in the quiet corner, and at some point somebody's come along and flattened them all down. all slowly becoming less and less legible. Look at that. That is, I think that's Robert Paisley. So, I haven't got my torch. Woodfield. Give you some idea of how big this graveyard is. And it was said that by doing this it would bring some life into the dull east end of the town. Now if they'd wanted an open space, you already had the town moor just about 100 metres over there. And literally, you know, nobody's going to come and have a picnic in here or anything like that. It's covered with dog crap. I've seen most of the epitaphs which existed back in the day. Some of them are absolutely beautiful. I mention ministers who passed, rectors, women who died in childbirth, families who lost tons of infants. There's one there for John McCain, who died October the 29th, 1856, aged 70. Thank God for all the past, something for the future, it was not forsaken. That one I did a video on called Susanna. That's that one there, look at it, slowly being destroyed. With the rain on them, it's made some of them a little bit clearer actually. There's erected to the memory of Thomas Bell of Bishop Weymouth, who died December the 5th, 1852, aged 61 years. Farewell, dear friend. Something along with farewell, for we shall, I think, and then it's to do with the Zion shore. He was a messenger down on something to do down at the docks. And then there's one at the burial ground. George, their son, departed this life May the 14th, 1809. Just 6 months old. Every single one of these stones, somebody had to make a conscious decision of, could we afford it? What were we going to inscribe on it? That's why I think it's always special to keep them and look after them. See if there's any more I can read. I have done a few stories on Facebook with some of the epitaphs of some of the long gone headstones that once stood in this particular place, and Sunderland history and so on. If you just do a search for epitaph, it'll come up with them. I did one on an epitaph to a cholera nurse. It was Sarah, also should call Elizabeth Fairley. She lost her life through cholera as well. That little building there, that's the Donaldson School, and there is one little headstone just on the other side of it randomly, and then there's another one in that garden of remembrance. So I think there's less than 100 here, so I do think this was the corner that was kept as a burial ground. I think there's some in that corner as well, but it's overgrown. Who's that one? Elizabeth Jackson. Tonight I'm hopefully going to actually write something up called the Desecration of Sunderland Parish Churchyard or Graveyard, which will have a little bit more detail about some of the stuff I've mentioned, because I've probably forgotten half of what I plan to say. So you've got to watch out for dog crap when you're coming across here. Let's get back on the path. Got a couple of minutes left. We'll go and see Rector Gray's. Before this was built, Sunderland didn't have its own parish church. So if you wanted to, if you were like an Anglican, if you wanted to get a baptism or a funeral or a wedding, you had to traipse all the way up to Bishop William Parish Church, which must be about 2 miles away from here. So a bit of a hike. As you can see, this is like a little garden laid out area. It's probably somewhere I wouldn't want to sit. But when I was trying to research about the destruction of this particular churchyard, I couldn't find any letters in the Sunderland Echo around that time with people's concerns or how big that is, concerns or complaints about this destruction. It was just a small little article, one in August of that year and one in September, highlighting the fact that the first stage was near to completion. Let's have a look on this one. This would have been a burial ground, probably vaults down under there. This is Robert Gray, Rector of Sunderland, born April the 1st, 1787, died February the 11th, 1838. Got Frederick, his third son, who was interred at St Chad's Churchyard in Shrewsbury. And then there's one of his sons, Eustace's fourth son, was interred in the Protestant cemetery. I think that was Brussels. I think it might be Brussels. Rector Gray's funeral was one of the largest Sunderland had ever seen. But it's a shame they're all taken down because so much history was just smashed to pieces. So I'll leave you with the last shot of Holy Trinity, looking fine. If you get the chance, it is open a few days of the week. I think check that on the website or on the Facebook page. Normally open, I think, Wednesday to Friday. You get a coffee and have a look around. It's all been beautifully done out inside. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you could do me a favour, and if you wish, give it a like or click on the subscribe to help grow the channel. So hopefully see you next time.